Hey y'all, it's MixJB back with another video. Today's video, as a part of my Race and Ethnic Studies senior capstone project, I would like to talk about self-care, specifically radical self-care, and what does that look like. First, to begin with this video, I would like to talk about my thoughts on, I would like to talk about my thoughts. I would like to talk about my thoughts with self-care and how it's been commercialized. Please forgive the ambient noises in the background. I live near an airport. Um, but I would like to talk about my experience with self-care, how it's been commodified and co-opted in many recent conversations, especially those having to do with capitalism. So self-care, as it was originally thought of, was to basically have people who are part of a capitalist society, not just capitalist, but racist, misogynistic, homophobic, transphobic, Islamophobic, xenophobic, all the isms you can think of, right? It was created as a tool for people living in marginalized communities to basically unwind and de-stress and take care of our mental health and also take care of our bodies as well as our emotional health. And self-care has now become an instrument for capitalism, I believe, to not only pretend as though these big institutions and these big corporations care about our health on an individual basis. I feel like there is a lot of pretending that comes with this. And I feel like there's a lot of pretending because so many times our corporations are also a part of society and they see where society is shifting, where workers' focuses are now shifting. And now to placate to those demands, if you will, they have now taken a lot of these issues around self-care, such as it could look like many different things for different people. It could look like spa days. It could look like just unplugging from social media. It could also look like meditation. It could look like going for a walk. It could look like watching your favorite Netflix show. But I think a key part of self-care that capitalism doesn't account for is the fact that we need to attentively and proactively spend time with ourselves, not just be alone and be isolated, because although that's part of it, that isn't the full picture in my mind when I think of self-care. When I think of self-care, I think of doing something intentionally for yourself, for your own betterment, that is not just mindlessly doing something. So for example, for some people, self-care could look like watching your favorite show on Netflix, but for some people, that could also be a downfall because everyone, like I said, everyone's self-care looks different. So for one person, that could be self-care, but for the next person, that could be helping them distract themselves from their responsibilities and what they need to do and to work on themselves as people, specifically. So now we get to the point of radical self-care. What is that? What does it look like? What could it be? For me, radical self-care is anything that pulls you out of the system of capitalism. So for me, radical self-care looks like not doing homework. Radical self-care looks like not going to work. Radical self-care looks like taking PTO. Radical self-care also looks like intentionally, again, spending time with yourself, divesting from other systems, other people, so you can then invest those things into yourself, such as your time, such as your mental and emotional energy, and even your physical energy. I feel like this definition of radical self-care works differently from the self-care that we have been experiencing currently in society because it decenters capitalism It decenters this idea that we need to all be working to be worth something. It decenters the idea that we have to perform self-care just so we can drain ourselves again in this capitalistic society. Those are just a few of the thoughts that I have when it comes to what it means to participate in radical self-care, because so many times big institutions try to performatively placate and pander to consumers, to workers, the working class, and convince us that these acts of self-care are necessary, but not necessary for personal development and growth, but necessary for the growth of these institutions, for the expansion of imperialism, for the expansion of capitalism. And capitalist, not only ideology and thought, but practice. And I say, hell no. I say, fuck that. It's already enough that we live in a society where we have to function with these things in our mind, and to now pretend that we are now going into an area of self-care just that's for ourselves. I don't buy it completely. And yeah, those are just a few of my thoughts when it comes to self-care, radical self-care, what it could be, what it is not. And I just encourage you all to re-examine how you practice your own self-care, radical self-care, but with particular interest to the question, how is my self-care benefiting me? How am I using my self-care consciously or unconsciously to avoid the work that I have set out in front of me? Also, how can I find new ways to practice self-care in a way that is sustainable, in a way that can always find itself helpful to me? These are some questions I want you to think about, particularly thinking about my own experience with radical self-care, especially during COVID-19 and the pandemic. I felt like a lot of my go-tos for self-care have not been working recently, and sometimes you're just called to change it up. And that's what I invite you to think about as you watch this video. And I hope you've learned something. I hope this video has made you think about self-care in a different way, and what it could be and what it can be and what it is and what it ain't. So until the next one, I'll see you later.